We also want to make sure these little lines that we created, which are also strokes right now, we also need to outline the path on that. Let's go to Object, Path, Outline Stroke. So now all of our strokes are outlined, so it's going to be really easy to swap out colors now. Since everything is a fill, there's no longer strokes on anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all, and there's actually a little color cheat I'm going to show you here in a minute. But I'm going to select all of these and make them kind of a bluish color for right now. I think eventually these will end up being a gradient. And let's make that a lighter color, because that's kind of a reflection happening. So we can zoom out and see if we like how some of these icons are going. So I'm going to show you that cool color changing shortcut right now. So we could do it like we did before. We select each object and we change the color. But what if we had 100 icons and we wanted to change the color on all of them? And not all of them had maybe 2 tones or 3 colors, and we don't want to select all of them and change them all to one color. So there's a really cool way where I can go to the select option. So select, go down to same, and go down to fill color. So what this is going to do is it's going to select everything with that fill color. So let me go back and make this just a different color. Make that purple, make that purple. So let's say I just want to change the handles. So I go ahead and highlight this color. I go to select, the same, and go to fill color, and it's going to select everything that is that color. So this really helps when you have a lot of different things on your art piece. So I did a map one time for a mall, and there was probably hundreds of small little colors. And they wanted to change the colors up for a new year. So instead of having to select each one of those colors and then changing them, I was able to just select one color, go down to fill, and select them all and change all of the colors, the entire color scheme of that map within seconds. And that was a huge time saver. So if you ever want to select something specific across an entire artboard, just go to select, go to same. There's also appearance. You could select the same blending mode. We'll get into blending modes in a little bit. You could select strokes and fill, opacity. There's several different ways you can select objects that have a similar attribute. So let's finish up our first icon. I kind of like this two-tone look, but I need to make some quick adjustments. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these layers right here, or I could just drag and drop. Hold Shift to unselect that purple circle, and make sure these are grouped so I have an easier time changing colors. So now I have this as one object and I have this as one object. So now I can click on these. I can right click, arrange, and I'm going to send it backward into the layering system. So now you can kind of see the two-toned look. So here's kind of how it looks zoomed out. And so another thing I want to do is go ahead and set my first artboard for my first icon. So artboards. So we're going to talk a little bit about artboards. So we're going to go to File, go down to Document Setup. So File, Document Setup, and you're going to see a little Edit Artboards option on Document Setup. So go ahead and click on Edit Artboards, and it's going to allow you to create different artboards. So by default, you have the one artboard, which you can then change the size of the artboard, and then you can create new ones. You can click up here to create a similar size, or you can just draw the kind of size that you'd like. We go ahead and draw a couple of artboards. So I'm going to draw this artboard and then create new. So new artboard. And these are going to be where all of our icons reside. And what's great about keeping our icons on these squares, not only does it help us design for the web, because they usually are going to be in a square format, because that's how you do the web development, is you work with square icons. But it's also going to be able to help us when we export our files as PNGs, because you can go to File and Export, and it's going to be able to export all of these as single PNGs, as opposed to having one icon or a big list of icons. This will be able to divide it up for you. So for example, if I wanted to have this icon, let's go ahead and make it, size it up. I can have this one as well, and once we develop our entire series, I think we'll probably end up doing 5 or 6 icons across here. We go to File, Export, and we'll talk about exporting a little bit later. I'm going to click on Use Artboards and then PNG. And when I export that to the desktop, it'll be nice and cropped, which will be so nice when you're working with hundreds of icons or even just 10 of them. It just kind of simplifies the process. So you can see how it exported each one in its own artboard, its own PNG. So we're going to go ahead and start to set that up. So we set up 5. If we need to add 6, we can always go to Edit Artboards and set that up again. So let's get rid of this big artboard. We're going to go to Document, Setup, Edit Artboards, and there should be a little close icon where I can close it out. Or you could just press the delete button and it went ahead and closed it out for us. So I think I'm going to go ahead and drag this off the artboard and work with this icon as the final. So I'm going to just resize it to where I think it would look the best, and we want to really maximize the space when you're doing an icon. So you don't want it to ever go over the edge and be cut off, but you really want to push it as far as you can to the edge. Now I'm going to switch this to a different color. I think what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and talk about gradients a little bit, because I think it would be really neat to do a slow gradient across this entire piece. So I'm going to select both of these objects and I'm going to group these together as one big large object. And I'm going to copy and paste. And the only reason I'm doing this is I want to save all these little pieces just in case I want to edit it someday in the future. So I always like to copy and paste and shift it over in my artboard. So now I want to make it all one color just to kind of see what we have. And now it's all grouped as one element. So now we're going to add a cool gradient to this icon. So now that we have it a single color, let's go over to our gradient tool, which is going to be right here in your toolbar. You're going to have different gradient types up here. So we're just going to do a linear gradient for now. So go ahead and click on there, and we're able to kind of adjust it. I'm just holding and adjusting. And this is the newest version of Illustrator, so it handles it just a little bit differently. In other versions, you'll see kind of a line where you can kind of change the direction. But with this, instead of a line, it just shows you a live preview, which is actually really nice and helpful, which is kind of a good development in this program. So I want to change the colors. I don't like this default gradient right here. So how do we do that? We go over to our gradient panel, which we should already have up in our panel area over here to the right, and we're able to change our points. So let's make them bright colors. So I'm going to double click on that, and right now it's just a grayscale. So it's just got one option here, which is white to gray. I'm going to go up here to this little sub menu right here, and we're going to switch this. Looks like you can't see it on the screen. Let me see if I can't drag it over so you can see. I'm going to click over, see gradient. You're going to click over to the small icon, and you're going to see CMYK or RGB. So CMYK is meant for printing projects. So you're going to be sending this to the printer, you're going to be screen printing it on a t-shirt. RGB is going to be for digital, for web. That's what we're doing these icons for, so we're going to switch to RGB. So now we're able to kind of pick a color, or we can pick it right here. So you have swatches, which you can load in and set. So if you have a certain brand you're working with and they have certain color palettes, you can bring those swatches in. You can also use the eyedropper tool to sample a specific color, which is actually a new feature. I don't believe they had that before in past versions of Illustrator. So I'm going to go back, and we're just going to do down here. You can also do the scale if you want to find the right color, but I want to do like a deep purple. Okay, I'm going to click on the other side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the eyedropper tool to sample that same purple. But I'm going to double click on it again, and I'm going to make it a little deeper and maybe a little bit more on the blue side. Almost like a jewel tone. And let's go ahead, and you can also change kind of where a gradient falls. So if you change this little middle area, you'll have the transition between purple and blue be quicker, so then there's going to be more blue. And the opposite is true. And you can also add different points and your gradients to create way more complex gradients. So that's how you can create metal gradients as well, as you have lots of different points going from a highlight to a low light. So I'm going to make this a little bit more of a complicated gradient. I can always take the eyedropper tool and sample that bright purple. So now I have a purple to blue to purple to blue. So it's kind of got a little bit of a striped kind of look to it. Or let's say I don't like that. I just want a nice transition from one color to another. I could just delete this little portion by dragging it down. Just drag it down and it deletes it. So now I'm back to the single purple to blue color. So now I want to change the angle of it. So I'm going to go back over to my gradient tool, which is over here on the left, and I have a linear gradient on. And now I'm able to kind of change the direction of the angle by just clicking and holding and dragging. Let's say I want it to be right about here. You can also do other things. You have a radial gradient, so it's going to be kind of starting in the center and going out as opposed to linear. So now we were able to add a neat gradient effect to this icon. So I feel like we're done with this first icon. We can always add little finesses and details later.